They say cats have 9 lives. This is the reduction of 2.5 hours worth of conversation between cats and Broomy, otherwise known as Tommy. And sit back, enjoy, and watch cats use up all 9 of his lives. This is why gas pressure is pinned against you cats. Because we know you can't answer it. There is no evidence to support it. You just explain it with graphs and diagrams and maths and explanation, but no demonstration. At least with Cavendish, you've got something to demonstrate what you believe to be true, but you don't have that with the gas pressure without a container. You've just got maths. Sit back and enjoy. And for those of you more interested in the debate tactics, watch for the tactics involved here. Swerves, diversions, red herrings, burden of proof reversal. This conversation's got the lot.
That's basically how I think it was. All gases are created at the ground level. You know, oxygen and all that all creates on the ground. And obviously when the sun comes up, it heats up the air molecules and creates steam. And then that's how we get things up into the cloud and they go back into the mountains, and it's like a cycle. So that's in a contained system. That's how we can have a gradient.
So your model there, you're talking about gases rising because the ground is warm, aren't you? But in reality, the denser gases are at the ground, not higher.
Yeah, because they're produced at the ground, aren't they? Like plants and all that all produce like the oxygen, and all gases are created at ground level. And the reason they don't escape is because it's contained. But the question that we're skipping is that how do we have a gas pressure in the first place without a container? That's the main thing.
We'll definitely get to that. Can that be the very next point we come to? And yeah. I definitely will not dodge that. We'll definitely come to that. But
so realistically, there is a reason why, if it's contained, that things would settle. But we're still getting away from that point of having a gas pressure in the first place without a container, and that's the main thing, because we can't.
And I'm not going to skip that. We will definitely get to that.
Sorry. So we can demonstrate that you can have gas pressure gradients in a container, but we haven't got no actual demonstrations or experiments to prove gas pressure without a container, and that's the problem. Well, we still yet haven't addressed pressure without a container. We're still on these things. So I would like to dive into that.
That's the trick of. Yeah, but that's sort of the trick of like Nathan Oakley's kind of show, and you watch that kind of stuff where he'll make a point and it's the wrong point. It needs diving into, but then, he's got his mute button and he'll mute people from digging down. And I think we are going to get to, and I promise you, before we leave this show, and if I don't get to it, you can take the clip and you can put me out as a liar all over the internet. Yeah. I will answer the question about gas pressure without container. I can guarantee it. But let's not skip over stuff. But I will go on to your question now. Now that's... Well, go on. What would you want?
Now I'm looking forward to the question. This is the question that does seem to stand out more than anything really.
Go on then. So what was the question?
So how can we have a gas pressure? How can we breathe air? How do we have gas pressure without a container? How does that happen?
Right. So I mean, I've bounced this around a lot with like your Nathan Oakley's and your Anthony Riley's, quite a few times. And first of all, you've got to define what you mean by gas pressure, or explain what you think gas pressure is, so we can, because if we're not on the same page on that, we'll get nowhere.
It's like PSI rated, isn't it? It's like PSI.
Yeah, basically. But what causes it?
Why do we not have equal pressure at the top of the atmosphere? Because I believe it's because it's contained, but we're supposed to be explaining how we have gas pressure without a container. That's the problem.
And that's exactly where I'm going with it. But to start with, you kind of said, I'm trying to kind of hint at, if you like, the general trend of the atmosphere being pulled down because of gravity, etc. But I want to get to gas pressure in a second.
But you're not telling me why it's not. That's the question: is how do we have a gas pressure without a container? So in a flat Earth model, there is a container, and that's why it does that. But you're supposed to be educating me on why it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Inside the sphere.
It's a manosphere, right? If I was to put pressure...
But we're talking about how we have gas pressure and an open container on the outside of the ball.
Well, I'm getting to that, but I'm going to have to walk you through it, okay?
Yeah.
I could do it with a bag of crisps, I could take a bag of crisps and I could look at it.
Yeah, but you need a container to do that. You can't measure gas pressure without a container. That's what we're getting at here. Well, you're just saying, imagine some gas in
where's the container?
Well, that's what I'm saying. We are contained in the flat Earth model. It is contained, but in your globe model, it's a violation. It isn't an intramolecular bond. It doesn't have that like solids and liquids, so you can test them. With gas, they're intra. So they don't group together. So you need to contain it in order to get that PSI reading. But you're saying you just put a thing in the air. That's a violation on the grand scale of things. You need to explain to me how we've got gas pressure in the first place. That's what's not being answered here.
So what's because honestly, we could talk about this gas pressure all day, but it all comes down to the fact that essentially you don't believe in gravity. That's what it boils down to, the whole thing.
To be honest, like, I mean, I asked you a straight question. How do you have a gas pressure without a container? You haven't demonstrated how that's possible. You've given me, a nice, in effect, a nice story and lots of writing papers. Yeah, I understand that these are probably credible sources of information, and these things need to be understood in order to talk about it. But the fact is, we can actually demonstrate certain things in reality. And it doesn't need all this stuff. It doesn't need these complicated voodoo spells and read this book, read that book, and learn this, learn that, because it just sounds to me like it's just pure indoctrination. It doesn't. You cannot demonstrate gas pressure without a container. So if you cannot demonstrate it, then all these things are irrelevant. In the end of the day, real science is what you can demonstrate and what you can prove.
We talked about gas pressure. You asked me how to show you pressure without a container, and I showed you that we could measure the gas pressure here, and I asked you where the container was, and essentially that's where that discussion ended, because you cannot show. What you're saying is, well, there must be a container, but where is it? If you want to ask about gas pressure without a container, there is a difference between pressure and pressurized. And let's go down that route, right? What is the difference between pressure and pressurized? What is the difference?
I don't know the difference between pressure and pressurized. I don't know what you're asking me. Could you?
And that is what flat earthers don't understand. And I think we've hit the nail on the head. And I think after this, you will no longer be a flat earther.
But do you concede that you can't demonstrate gas pressure without a container? Do you concede that?
Well, no, because we're talking about pressure.
You're talking about it, but you can't demonstrate it.
No. What's impossible is pressurized without a container, not pressure.
It is gas pressure by effect, but so we still have gas pressure that's still not going out into the vacuum of space. But the bottom line is, it's a good way you're explaining it, but it still doesn't demonstrate it. We don't have any demonstrations of it.
Right.
This is something now I have to believe what you're telling me with all these graphs and all these explanations, that therefore it's possible. And what you got to understand is, I am interested in what you can prove and demonstrate. I understand that you can explain things very well, but that doesn't mean that you're right, because you explain things with a lot of
Let's get there. Let's get there to that explanation, shall we? Let's get to that explanation.
Pressurized pressure. We have gas pressure, and you haven't demonstrated it. So I mean, I'm not going to just like. I'm not just jumping, flip-flopping between the two. I feel like the reason you're
they are different things.
Well, technically, we have gas pressure, or you want to say it's pressurized, or you're not really answering how this works makes sense on a globe.
Yeah, no, I am. I'm getting there. I am getting there. But the thing is, in these debates, like what you so rarely get with the likes of Sleeper Warrior and Nathan Oakley, is them digging down to the nitty gritty, which is what we're doing. And
I know exactly what you're saying. I really do hear what you're saying, but you keep saying that whatever Katz is saying isn't a demonstration. So what would you consider to be a satisfactory demonstration?
A physical demonstration of gas pressure without pressured or pressure without container. An actual physical thing that we can look at and go, right, there we go. There's gas pressure in there that we can measure when it's not contained. Which is just
but you don't necessarily mean right now, because surely you must understand how ridiculous a request that would be while he's in his studio. No. That's not an answer. That's evasiveness. Is your container a dome? A glass dome made of blue,
I don't know.
Shiny stuff.
I concede. I cannot demonstrate a container, but I can demonstrate gas pressure in a gradient.
And yet we must, or it can't possibly be true. I'll hand you back over to Kat.
Lovely.
I mean, well, it is. I was going to say that obviously in the debate, it's gone the way that all kind of flat Earth debates go on, and that is that there's been no evidence for a flat Earth presented at all. And there never is, and I'm sure you've got to accept that there is no evidence for a flat Earth. It's not been presented. But
why is Kat avoiding the question? How do you get the pressure first?
How do you get the pressure first? Well, there's no need at all for a container to get gas pressure. It's like, how do you get the gas pressure? You have the gas pressure by having gas there. The particles bounce off something, like my hand, All right, and my hand therefore feels the pressure. If they don't bounce off anything, they bounce off each other. All right, if I put something in that space, I'm going to measure the pressure. You don't need a container, you need the gas.
Let's have a little listen to what Cat said back in September 2018. Ever since September 2018, this has been pinned against Cat, and listen to what he said back in the days before he was a dishonest baller.
Now, what Nathan is saying is you can't have pressure without a container.
Without the balloon, these air particles aren't going to be striking anything. Therefore, there is no pressure.
So, and again, whoever's asked that, I'm assuming it's a flat earther, whoever has asked that is obviously, asked that before we address the difference between pressure and pressurized. But, it's a non-question. Why do you need a container to have gas? We are going to get to, and I promise you, before we leave this show, and if I don't get to it, you can take the clip and you can put me out as a liar all over the internet. Yeah. I will answer the question about gas pressure without container. I can guarantee it. But let's not skip over stuff.
So we've just seen all the evidence that Katz claims that he was going to answer it. And to be fair to Katz, he did answer the question, but it was the opposite to what he stated in September 2018. And we'd like to know why it is that your position has changed. Because in 2018, you said without the balloon, there is no pressure. But now you're saying we don't need a balloon. Why?